It's Wednesday, September 6th, 2023. Let's talk about the news. From the Straits Times, ASEAN leaders to meet in Jakarta for regional summit amid tensions over new Chinese map. Representatives from the ASEAN group of Southeast Asian nations kicked off their annual summit in Jakarta yesterday, the meeting focusing on a range of issues related to Myanmar's ongoing civil crisis and general economic concerns. But much of the conversation so far has been focused on China's new official national map, which claims sovereignty over a bunch of territory that other nations also claim as their own. The offended parties are many and varied, ranging from India, which shares a border with China, both nations claiming territories along that border and at times fatally fighting over them, to the Philippines, which claims islands in the South China Sea that China also claims, to Chinese ally Russia, which has expressed irritation over China claiming an island along their shared border that the Chinese and Russian governments agreed nearly 20 years ago to split. Pretty much every country that shares a border with China has something to be upset about on this new map, though, which the Chinese government says it released in order to correct issues with other existing regional maps. The degree to which this will further unify other Southeast Asian nations against China has yet to be seen, but it's unlikely to help ease any of those tensions. From the New York Times, Kim Jong-un and Putin plan to meet in Russia to discuss weapons. The leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is planning to visit with Russian President Putin in Russia sometime later this month, reportedly to discuss the former providing the latter with weapons for its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. This is notable in part because Kim Jong-un doesn't leave North Korea very often, and in part because it reinforces suspicions that Russia is having trouble keeping its troops equipped for what's become a fairly attritional, grinding sort of combat in Ukraine. The US and other Western nations have been trying to dissuade countries like North Korea and China from providing arms to Russia, but these attempts have gone about as well as you would expect so far, though in a few cases the declassification of intelligence about the logistics of these transfers seems to have slowed these sorts of transactions. And from the Wall Street Journal, China's Country Garden buys time to repay debt, but not long. The largest real estate company still standing following a wave of collapses and bankruptcies in China, Country Garden, has received approval from its investors to extend the maturity date on some of its bonds by 3 years, which will give it more time to pay off that particular debt, which was originally due Monday, alongside a far smaller interest payment, which it paid, though it still has another big debt to pay later this week, which has been described as make or break. The Chinese real estate sector has been responsible for about a third of the country's economic growth over the past few decades, but real estate purchases have slumped and companies have gone under at a worrying pace, leaving buyers without finished homes and investors without their hoped-for profits. Evergrande was perhaps the largest and most well-known of the previously high-flying Chinese real estate companies to go under in the past year or so, but Country Garden is also being closely watched, as there's a chance it can recalibrate its accounts and get back on its feet, but it's also in a pretty bad spot monetarily, with a lot of debt to service. So these moves might help it stabilize, but might also represent the death throes of yet another Chinese real estate giant. If you're finding some value in one-sentence news, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.